Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on. And these two individuals are helping out students land internships. And so I'd love for you guys to introduce yourself and talk about your company and how you're helping students.
Yeah, so I guess I can start off. I'm Pranay Singh. I'm the co-founder of Ponte with Anisha. And so, like I said, we're working on Ponte. So the idea here is to basically we're building a platform that allows students to find opportunities year round. So we're focusing on bringing micro internships to students around the world. So for those of you who might not know what micro internships are essentially just short-term project-based internships. So this allows students to work at times that are convenient for them. And then on the other side of that, we've specifically been targeting startups and small businesses because often they're the ones who are the most agile, the most lean, and just need that extra set of hands at any given moment.
Yeah. And I'll just add to it, but also thank you for having us on your
Of
podcast
course,
today,
yeah.
David. Yeah, and I'll just give more of an explanation on what Ponte is. So it's a platform designed to connect students with these micro internship opportunities that Pranay was explaining. And essentially, we want to target startups across the globe. And our inspiration behind Ponte kind of stemmed from our own experiences. Now we're recent new grads, but kind of navigating through internships across different industries as we come from like different backgrounds and majors throughout college. And we realized that there's like a big value in what these internships provide and like bridging the gap between just like theoretical or academic learning versus like real world, hands-on, like learn by doing experiences. And also on the business side, like budget wise, like these small startups aren't able to afford like a traditional summer intern or like year-long co-op student. So we're aiming to provide access to both students for like valuable learning opportunities and also catering specifically to needs of startups to offer them like short-term project-based interns and yeah.
Yeah. And what would you say the importance of the idea of it being year round? And I've never really thought about that for internships, but I guess internships primarily take place during the summer, and I know of co-ops that sometimes take place during the year. But what would you say is the importance of having opportunities that go year round? Like, what are the benefits and why'd you guys implement that?
Yeah, so basically, when it comes to it being year round, as I'm sure everyone knows, college, you have 4 years, 3 summers to kind of figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. We both just graduated, we both have jobs, and me personally, I still don't know what I want to do. And so that was something we were talking about our senior year. We're like, dang, like I wish we had more opportunities to explore more industries and look at different opportunities because otherwise you're kind of stuck to this very small slice of the pie of what's out there and what possibilities you can explore. And we are like, it'd be nice to have more opportunities like co-ops, but the main issue, at least for us with co-ops, is that you have to take time off school to pursue these full time. And so
Mhm.
it's not something you can really do on the side while you're also in school. So our approach to these micro internships is that it works for the student schedule. So say you have a couple weeks, you don't really have any exams going on, or maybe you're in a slow semester, you just have extra time. You're like, dang, I wish I could take this time to learn some new skills, explore some different things. This would be a great opportunity to sign up for a micro internship or also looking at it in terms of students who have to work through college. I know personally, a lot of my friends and stuff, they need full-time jobs or they're supporting themselves through college. And it makes it really hard to justify taking time off school when they've had to like take these loans out and then they have to work full time to support themselves. So say once again, there's just some extra time that they have, they can then go and apply for these micro internships and still gain like insights into different industries and fields while also gaining that valuable experience for their resume that they can then go on to help them secure that full-time job after graduation.
Yeah. And also you touched on the idea of like the small businesses or the people you're doing these micro internships with. And so can you kind of run me through what is the process behind that and why um bigger companies or I guess you're more targeting the smaller businesses and the medium-sized businesses for these opportunities? And do you think that bigger companies would be interested in hosting these micro internships in the future, or you think primarily it's a good idea to target the small, medium-sized businesses?
Yeah, I can touch on this. I think it's primarily a good idea, and which is what we're doing, is starting off with these small businesses because they're the one with this gap and the need for it. I'm sure these bigger tech companies or firms can easily add this strategy into their own, but
Hmm.
people are already like applying to these. They're not like they are being filled with applications continuously already, and there's like no need for it. So we're specifically touching on these small business and startups because they are looking to grow their own platform, their own organization, and solely looking for people. So I guess like the process of like how Ponte attracts these small businesses is kind of setting up like a one-stop shop for these small startups to post roles, screen applicants, and manage an internship process. And I think it's because sometimes these companies don't even have like HR, like super small
Hmm.
startups. And I think attracting these businesses involves showcasing our platform's like benefits in providing like skilled, affordable student expertise. And we're doing that through like our resume parser and matcher, and
Hmm.
also offering tools that simplify hiring processes. Because as I said, like they have lower number of employees, so like they don't want to manage like 200 applications. Because as we're seeing, like people are applying to these startups and they don't even have enough employees on their own to kind of sort out. So we're doing the most that we can to take the load off of these startups. And at bigger tech companies, like they have like different teams. Like they're just
Hmm.
very structured. So they already have everything set up, and we don't want to target them just yet because they don't need it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And how long is the average micro internship? So I'm sure it ranges a lot, but is it a couple weeks, a couple months? Like how long is the average project or the average internship?
Yeah, and so that's kind of the nice thing when it comes to micro internships is that flexibility in time frame. So I'm sure you probably know as someone who's operating their own business, sometimes like you just need someone who will help you quickly get through some Excel sheets for like a week or so, especially when you're running a small agile team. It's like as a founder or co-founder, there's usually bigger fish to fry. You
Yeah.
usually have bigger problems than making sure that, oh, like these spreadsheets are perfectly aligned, like our database is all set up well. And it's like you just want someone who can take care of that in the back end and get it done. So that's like an example of maybe what like a week or 2 week project might look like. And then on the flip side, you might have some of these longer projects. Say you're going through like a complete rebrand for your website and your whole social media presence. For
Mhm.
something like that, it's often beneficial to have like a whole team to be working with you. But at the same time, most of these startups, they don't really have the financial ability to hire out a full team of developers and have them working all the time. And so then again, these micro internships are helpful in the sense that, okay, you can bring on a team of like 3 or 4 student developers who will help you build this out throughout whatever course of time you need.
Yeah. And what particular industries and I guess sorts of internships do you think have been the most popular? What are some areas you kind of want to break into? And I can imagine that tech or maybe like a banking or consulting, like those are the internships people are looking for, but what have been your most popular areas so far?
Yeah, so I would say in terms of just like pure listings from the startup side, a lot
Mhm.
of them have been more on the tech side, specifically with AI and all the developments going on in that space right now. A lot of the founders that we found are traditionally non-technical in their background, and so they often need like that extra set of hands to help them figure out like, okay, like how do we set up a website? Like how do we link our front end, back end, and database all together? Like how do we make this work? It's something that's not like relatively super complex, but they just don't have the background or expertise in that. So often they're looking for someone who can help out in terms of that. And so we've seen a lot in terms of like web development, AI engineering, kind of creating a lot of like these wrappers or custom wrappers to implement into their programs and what they're building. But one thing interesting that we noticed that ended up coming up a lot more is just like help in terms of business development like any small business or startup, a lot of your time, as I'm sure you know, goes into acquiring clients, finding people, just spending a lot of time on the phone or on email, chasing down leads. And so we ended up finding that that was actually a surprisingly big use case for a lot of startups. Because once again, there are bigger things a lot of these companies want to focus on than just like cold emailing hundreds of people every day. So we ended up finding that like customer discovery and lead generation ended up being a lot bigger area than we had initially anticipated.
Yeah, that's exactly what I expected. I have a friend who has, it's not too similar to your business, but the biggest role that he was recruiting for was business development because I think a lot of college students are definitely equipped and capable of doing that, like with their
Mhm.
communication skills. However, I think it's also a great opportunity for business owners to host them, to have them. And so it's kind of a win-win situation for that. And for your micro internships, what's typically, is it more remote or is it on site? Or also, where are these companies based? Is that like a specific concentration area or is it all over the country?
Yeah, so I would say right now it's all over the country, and right now, kind of targeting remote just because we're trying to figure out how it works globally, like with international students, because that's been a big chunk of our like traction that we've gained in students. Like if you look through the LinkedIn comments, a lot of them kind of struggle to find places to work with like the visa and student visa and kind of everything with like how the visas work internationally and in the United States. But I would say we're focusing purely remotely now, but there are some startups in California and a lot in Texas, Oklahoma, kind of spread nationwide. And I guess if they were pulling students off Ponte from like nearby towns and colleges in their same town, definitely be open to in person because they would just have them come in or hybrid like 2 or 3 days a week, just solely based on the project that's needed. Because some need to be like, say, a social media manager job, fully come into the office, maybe like make marketing videos. Like that would have to be in person, right? Like working with the team, kind of like be in the space, working with different restaurants or however. Um, Based on like the business need of the specific company and like the job posting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A little bit different, but in those couple of LinkedIn posts that you guys had that had like those thousands and thousands of comments, like how did that feel and like what were some key lessons you learned along with that? Because I'm seeing like 5,000 comments, 3,000 comments, and each of those comments are people dropping their email, showing interest in your service. And so was that like a huge validation point for you guys to kind of like take me through that process? Because if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was the first time I've actually heard of you guys and as well as 5,000, 10,000 other people. So yeah, run me through that process and what was that like?
Yeah, so that was kind of when we were just getting started. So we had started working on Ponte before that, figuring out like, okay, what's our ICP? Who are our customers? What do they look like? Who might they be? And so at the time we were running more like local experiments. So like at our schools, we had like about like 50 students who were working with relatively locally. And then we're like, okay, let's see like who else might be interested. And so we decided to start posting on LinkedIn. And so initially it was mainly for our beta testing. We had a few companies lined up who were interested in kind of exploring this further. And so that's kind of what we had it set up for. And so through the LinkedIn posts, basically we realized that we had made a couple LinkedIn posts before, and those were specifically from our company page. And so kind of like the biggest lessons and takeaways in terms of that were like, first of all, that personal brand has so much more reach and so much more of an impact than your company brand will. Like if you can associate a name or a face to a company, it makes it so much more personable. It makes it feel more real, especially when it's like a small business. You're like, who's this random account who's posting this stuff? Like, is this even legit? But when it's coming from like our personal accounts, you can see our profile, be like, okay, like this is a real person. They're not just trying to scam me for money. And so that was like a big thing that we learned along the way. And then also in terms of our ICP, we didn't expect to have such a big outreach and push from international students. And so that was something that we were kind of on the edge of because in college, we both had a decent amount of friends who were international students. And so we've seen firsthand like the difficulties that come with being an international student, not being able to apply for a lot of internships or jobs because they don't sponsor. And then the ones that do are usually these mega corporations that are extremely competitive and difficult to get. And so we're seeing a lot of our peers who are more than capable of being passed up on opportunities just due to like their visa status. And so we started researching it more and looking more into it. And we did interviews, talked to lawyers and different people, and we're able to find that there is a way to allow international students to work. And it works best specifically with startups or early stage businesses. And so through that, we were able to kind of help pair the two. And so by specifically targeting international students, we realized there's a really big target there that's kind of being left untouched by more of these bigger companies in the US today.
Yeah.
Okay. kind of touch on that. So I guess it was very validating. And at the very beginning, like you were saying, Pranay, it felt a lot more authentic when we were posting from our personal page because when we posted from like our company's LinkedIn, it wasn't gaining as much traction and we were like, oh, unsure. But I think something I learned from this was like personally, I wouldn't want to go reach out or sign up for a platform that I don't know, like something that's just starting off or like kind of just hopping off from the ground because you don't know what's in it for you and like what can they do for you is kind of like what people want. And so the first thing that I did and also Pranay, we sent out emails like within our like department newsletter. I go to Cal Poly, so I just sent it out to like the entire Cal Poly like comp sci department newsletter, and I was slowly gaining some traction because it was through my personal email. I gave a little blurb on like my background, and people kind of like related to me because they went to the same school or they were same major. So that like helped us slowly start getting people on the wait list. And then we were like, some people are totally interested. It was like maybe like 50 or 60, not too many people out of like thousands. And then as soon as we posted, some of those same people were started commenting back again on our LinkedIn. And then we were just like refreshing the page and every day there's like 1,000 more. And I think that was honestly like really cool. And also we found like a little niche in the market, which is these international students. And I think all these comments allowed us to like look more into these individuals like backgrounds because they would enter information into our wait list and give us more data on like we had to kind of pivot a little bit. And it's not even pivot, it's kind of like add a new niche of our market that no one kind of taps into or has tapped into yet, which is these international students, which was awesome.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you guys don't mind, I'll definitely be using both of the personal brand stories as a commercial for my company. And
Awesome.
so, and we'll talk about that after the call. But besides that, for the personal brand, I think it's an interesting thing to touch on because I remember I saw like Gary Vaynerchuk, for example, like he has 5 million LinkedIn followers, and his actual company, VaynerMedia, for example, has like I think only a couple hundred K, maybe a million followers. And so, and you see that across the board with everyone, where their company page is a fraction of the amount of followed as their personal brand. And I see this happening all the time where I would imagine that like JP Morgan would have more followers than like Jamie Dimon. And I think they might now, but I see more people now talking about Jamie Dimon than JP Morgan. And so what would you say like the trend is, and have you seen this with yourself that personal brands are more important than the company brands in terms of, I guess, monetizing or scaling your business? And then why do you think that is?
Yeah, so I think it's extremely important and I think it's super useful. Like I said, being able to put a face or a name to what's going on, what you're doing, it kind of makes you and your company one, which can be a really good thing, or sometimes it can go really poorly. But hopefully in our case, it'll continue to go well. But in terms of monetization, I feel like it helps build that credibility. As an early stage company or startup, it's like you don't have much credibility or much to really like back your company. It's just like, hey, I have this idea. I think it'll really work. We have a few people who are interested. That's why you should sign up. Like, yeah, that's interesting, but it's like, what's the actual impact of this? Who's gonna care? But it's like being able to attach like that personal connection to your company, show your story more outwardly, makes it a lot easier to follow and understand. So for like me and Anisha combined, we've had 7 different internships across 4 different industries. We've explored multiple options. We've seen it firsthand. We've gone through this process. We know the difficulties that it comes with the whole internship game and like how it works. Like we faced it firsthand, and that's why we're building this. We're building a solution to a problem that we're familiar with. And so it helps create that familiarity and that sense of credibility that we know what we're doing. We can help you do it as well. And so it just helps there.
Yeah, and not even, I guess that just like adds credibility based on like technical expertise, but also I think that plus like especially these days with social media and everything, like a personal brand is everything. Like everyone has some sort of social media, and the first time you hear someone's name, like I feel like people just run to LinkedIn, like try to get to know about them, or if you connect with someone like a stakeholder, for example, you go to a VC meeting, the first thing someone's going to do is honestly, people are pivoting towards Instagram because they want to get to know the person as a person and not just like their background, like what is their resume. And I think when like founders or people that want to become an entrepreneur, like start off. I think like personal brand really humanizes the business as well. And when people are looking for funding, like it allows these stakeholders or um, people that are going to fund you to connect more emotionally with like the entire journey and not just like the product, but like the purpose behind the startup. Because when it comes to funding, people want to fund because they believe in the person and like the founders as a whole and the team, obviously plus like the
Mhm.
platform, but also like how they're going to do in the future. And I think that all comes down to like personal branding. Like, do you believe in the person specifically?
Yeah, and especially for these new companies, the first thing anyone's going to look at is who's running this company. If you have, if you're a new brand, the brand is basically made up of who's working there. And if there's only, 10 people there, they're going to sum up their brands together to make whatever that company is. And so I think it's an interesting trend I see happening now. And I think people are paying more attention to it. And obviously you guys made it for the best and, had those viral posts and yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And for Ponte, what would be your goals for the next couple years, next couple months? Like, what would you like it to look like as time goes on and in the foreseeable future?
Yeah, so for the next couple months, basically our main plan is so we have kind of like a three-pronged business model. So on one side we have students, on the other side we have businesses, and the third prong that we're really diving deeper into now is educational institutions. And so the plan for like the next 6 months is to really focus on locking down these educational institutions as clients. So when you look at the traditional job boards that are specifically targeting students, thinking of like Handshake as like the biggest one, you see them signing these contracts and making these deals with schools one-on-one to provide these resources. And so that's kind of what we're pivoting towards now, especially now that we have the traction and the ability to show like, hey, in the past couple months, we've had over 10,000 students sign up. We've had over 100 companies use our platform. We've been able to help this many students land these internships, which in turn will help your school. And so we're kind of focusing on that in the next few months in terms of sales. And then also then in terms of like the technical aspect, just kind of refining the products we have and expanding our product line. So currently we've built out like a AI resume parser and matcher. And so basically it's like a more modern version of a traditional ATS system. So we really want to work on perfecting that. It's for the most part, it works really well. Occasionally there's some issues. So just completely iron that out. And then also expand our resources for students. And so what we want to do is also be able to provide students with like coaching and mentoring and different resources to break into these different like high paying fields and careers that a lot of them are interested in. And so that's something we've done personally. And so we want to be able to give that out and build that out for students as well. And then long term, we kind of see Ponte becoming a global platform for micro internships. And so going beyond just US based companies and students and kind of expanding internationally to basically allow companies and students from all over the globe to connect to each other. In today's day and age, it's a very tech focused world. Obviously, after COVID, Zoom and different technologies have enabled this sort of communication and cross cultural exchange. And so we want to just really like expand on that and use that to the best of our abilities.
Yeah. And I could definitely see it. Like, I'm sure you guys have heard of extern.com.
Mhm.
And that's just, they've taken a style of work and made that an entire business. And I know I've had friends apply for like the PwC one and stuff like that. So I could definitely see, microinternship.com or ponte.com being the future. And so I definitely see the vision. And my next question is, I've seen that you guys offer a lot of support for undergrad, grad students, international students. I've also talked with some recruiters and they've started to notice that high school students are starting to want to get out there and get active early. And so have you guys kind
Mhm.
of looked into that market or not yet? And if so, what do you think about that?
We've like explored it a little bit, but right now that's not kind of our main focus. The
Mhm.
main drawbacks that we found at least is when working specifically with startups, they want someone who can hit the ground running. They don't want to spend a lot of time training, like introducing them to the system. Like they just want someone who can hit the ground running as fast as possible. And unfortunately, just due to the nature of the experience students have, high schoolers, generally speaking, do not have the ability to kind of like hit the ground running with a lot of these things. They're often a lot slower than like a graduate student would be. In working in like software engineering. And
Mhm.
so that's why we've been a little bit reluctant to explore that field right now, but it's definitely something we're looking into in the future, especially with more of like those business side things, like we were talking about earlier with like business development or like lead generation. We think that could be a strong avenue, but generally through like our customer interviews, we found that most of these startups are looking for like the highest degreed candidates as possible for these types of positions.
Mhm. And another thing is a way that Ponte could essentially in the future target these high school students is not primarily through like offering an actual job or like micro internship, but as we said, we want to expand our services to add like career coaching and skills development programs. And personally, I think we both went through like some of these coaching or like boot camps throughout high school, and I think that helped us like figure out like our career path or what we want to do in the future. So I think something like that with that Ponte can offer can still target high school students and allow them to kind of, I don't know, be better prepared to start off in college like, and like start off day one in their major through like skills development, boot camps, different career coaching, like have a mentor in a startup. I feel like that's something that people would be willing to do instead of offering them a paid job because they're not sure how they work or anything. But anyone is kind of willing to provide like career advice or career coaching and figure it out. And I think that's beneficial to high school students for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned earlier you guys were targeting educational institutions to kind of work with them. And so what would that process look like? And I know you told me you're still ironing everything out, but what are kind of like your target areas for that? Are you going to colleges and saying we could offer this to you guys, and then your entire university can have access to this sort of resource? Like what process are you guys aiming for in that realm?
Yeah, so that's basically the business model there, where it would be like we go to schools, we're like, okay, we'll sign a contract with y'all for X amount of time. In exchange for that, your students will have full access to our platform along with the resources we provide that we might normally charge individual students for. So it comes with all those resources, full access to our platform, and the ability for students to use those. And then additionally, we plan on building out kind of these individualized enterprise versions of Ponte to where that their opportunities are more localized so that there is more ability to get like those in-person jobs. Because what we've also seen with startups is that some of them do prefer like in person. They're like, hey, like I would love to have students from UT because there's so many startups in Austin. They're like, I'd love to have like students who are in Austin coming to work with us, like face to face as well. And so really focusing and building around that in-person connection that a lot of these companies and students want.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so you guys, collectively have had a lot of internships. You're building a company around getting internships. What are some key pieces of advice that you think you could offer students, obviously besides getting a micro internship, that they should be looking for, and just some key strategies to leave them with in landing these opportunities that you guys have had?
Yeah, so I can kind of kick it off for this. I'd say I'm going to touch upon like kind of if you want to be an entrepreneur, because I guess like that's where we are right now. And then I can kind of kick back to like my background. But I'd say for like aspiring tech entrepreneurs specifically, I would really heavily like emphasize the importance of like being flexible and like the agility, especially in this day and age, because things are continuously changing and there's constant like constructive criticism or like negative criticism from like both stakeholders or users. And I feel like leveraging the feedback and taking things more in a positive way because I feel like a rejection from someone is just a way to kind of redirect yourself. And so, like, continuously iterating a product or tool or software or whatever you want to bring to the table specifically, just to stay ahead in a very competitive landscape.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And
Yeah.
sorry, yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna add to that as well. I was just gonna say, in terms of like entrepreneurs, I think like the biggest thing that I've learned is just to stick with it and be consistent. It's kind of cliche, but It's never built overnight. It's never viral. Like I think the hardest part of doing anything new, especially with all these startups you see popping up that raising all these like $1 million rounds out of nowhere, it's so flashy, it's so big, it's so loud. I think like it never shows like the truth and reality of like the months and years that people put in behind the scenes before they ever get like that first offer or that first round of funding. And so I think like the hardest part of doing anything new is just sticking with it. And especially for like Anisha and I, we both come from more technical backgrounds. Like we've never had any experience operating or running business before. And so you have to learn to wear a lot of different hats and do a lot of different things. And it's hard most of the time. Like it usually it does not come easy. It's difficult. And I'm sure you face the same thing, having to start your own thing. And it's like you just have to learn to roll with the punches and adapt and just be responsive to what's going on and try your best. And it's like showing up every day has so much more of an impact than just like hoping to go viral out of nowhere.
Yeah. And by the way, before I get into it, I 100% agree. You know, you have to be insanely patient and you have to always roll with the punches. It's just like a never-ending, journey of being patient and just seeing where things go. And so, I couldn't agree more. And now let's just imagine that, I just stepped foot on UT. I'm a freshman. I want to do software engineering. And excuse me if I get the language wrong. I'm not really a coder, but I stepped foot on UT and I want to become a software engineer for Google, let's say. And, I know that people are getting internships, people are getting opportunities. What should I be looking for throughout college? And like, what are some tactical steps I should be taking throughout my experience at college?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak on that because I just started my first week at Google as a software engineer a few
Hmm.
days ago, actually. And I interned last summer. And as a freshman, I feel like I did always feel like I was behind. People were applying because I was comparing myself to like people in finance or people more in like business roles because they start at different times and they start. Um, I think also computer science internships. School starts in August or September based on quarter semester system. And then right into it, you start interviewing, you start applying for stuff. And the first few months, especially because no one really knows anything, you're just trying to make friends, you're getting to know your classes, you probably move away to a different state or city. And I feel like some people are really on top of it, but I think a big thing is to if it's software engineering specifically, like continuously just trying to improve technical skills and knowledge. People say that networking is like super important, but I think when it comes to software engineering, networking is the first step, but you do have to get through all your technical rounds. Like I'm sure networking helped me get that first like interview, but then I had like 4 or 5 more rounds after that. And just talking my way through wouldn't get me anywhere. It's truly like just like kind of grinding and cracking down on your technical skills and knowledge. I don't think like a programming language specifically is important. It's honestly like if you know one programming language or you're good at one, it's like applicable to pretty much any other language just based on like they want to know, interviewers want to know how your brain works. Like just talking stuff out. If you're in an interview, you don't want to just sit quiet and just code away because then they don't know what you're thinking or what process you're trying to take to finish a question. And I figured out that in a few of my interview rounds, I wouldn't even get the question right at the very end. Like some of my test cases would fail. But a big thing was like, I would start talking at the very beginning, trying to understand like what it is. Like I want to talk everything out. And then also they are more than happy to help. People say like you're competing against your interviewer, but honestly, like they want to see you succeed. Like they want to see you happy and they just want to see where they can help you out. They're not going to take over and code the entire leak code question for you, but they are definitely willing to help and listen to your thought process. So I think that's the biggest thing when once you actually get an interview. And before that, the steps to get to an interview is just talking to different people. I think joining clubs was a really big thing because people are continuously posting on different platforms, just like you're with like-minded people. I joined like Society of Women Engineers and Women in Hardware and Software. And I think that was really beneficial, especially as a freshman and sophomore, because I had no idea when I was supposed to apply. I didn't know what timelines were, and I was like, I'm late and everyone else has a job. So I think another big thing is like not to compare yourself to someone else that already has an internship because everyone has their own timeline.
Yeah. You guys definitely should put some, I was just thinking some sort of community feature for all the people getting micro internships. Because I was just thinking if you're servicing hundreds or thousands of students, and let's just say they all are doing business development for companies in Texas, I think if they were all in some sort of community working together, could be cool. I'm not trying to say anything bad, I just thought that'd be cool. And yeah, so is there any other tactical bits of advice, I guess, for landing interviews and internships? And I completely agree with the networking aspect too, where no pun intended, like the networking is to bridge the gap between like the interview and to you in the interview. But actually, once you get to the interview, then you have to show like for software engineering that you actually can code and do the job well. So, how important would you say polishing up your resume, like as you said, joining communities, all those small steps along the way are to actually accomplishing, to show that you're worthy and also being able to effectively do the job once you're there?
Mhm. I would say resume is honestly like the by far the most important thing because that's the first thing anyone checks, especially these days. AI will kind of do everything for the company. If you don't match specific keywords or like target what the application says or like what the roles and responsibilities require, like you're going to be an automatic rejection. So I think really tailoring your resume towards different applications is a very big thing, which I didn't learn until recently. Actually, I was just sending out the same resume to like 100+ jobs, and I was like, why am I getting so many rejections in return? But it's because they're all like software engineering roles, but based on a company, based on the level, based on what industry it is. Even though it's software engineering, these different companies have different like values. They want to hire someone that kind of fits their values and motto essentially and like align to the bigger picture of what the company is trying to do. So I'd say just like tailor little keywords, like maybe add some emotion if it's like a more fun company. I don't know. And then if it's
Yeah.
purely like cracking down, like you're just trying to get code, like adding a lot of personal projects would be good. Sometimes they want to see higher education, but that depends if like you're trying to go into a more like product manager role, even though that's technical. Just like I think slightly tweaking different resumes for different specific roles and not just submitting the same one out to like hundreds and hundreds that you really want to work for.
Yeah,
Mm.
and I can kind of touch on in terms of internships, maybe like the less technical aspect. So just as like a quick background, I studied industrial and systems engineering and minored in computer science. So I have a pretty technical heavy background, but I'm starting my job in basically a month going into consulting full time. And so I recruited consulting last summer as well. And so I've had kind of a weird path where after freshman year, I worked in product engineering. And then after sophomore year, I went to work in biotech in commercial business intelligence. And then this past summer, I was working in consulting. And so, like, as someone who's kind of gone all over the place in terms of my experiences, I think the biggest piece of advice that really helped me was like, just put yourself out there and do different things, like join clubs, join things you're interested in, go explore what's out there. So like freshman year, we started during COVID 2020. There wasn't a lot going on. A lot of stuff was closed down, everything's virtual. And the one thing I was told was join clubs, like even if you don't know if you'll like it or not, just join, you don't know what's out there and it'll kind of open the door for you. And so like some of the first clubs I joined were like the off-road team. So we built an off-road car and raced it in competition across the country. Super cool experience. Doesn't have anything to do with consulting. But that kind of role was what I was able to leverage in my interviews to kind of land that first internship in product engineering. I was able to talk about the work we did with the car, the data analytics we were doing, and the different tools I had to use to be able to do that. And so that I was able to leverage into that first internship. And then once I had that first internship, I was able to leverage those skills and what I learned into my second internship. I joined some other clubs. I joined some leadership organizations. I joined a consulting club on campus. I was in student government. And so basically just having exposure to a lot of different people, ideas, and possibilities kind of really opened my mind. Because originally going into college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't even know what consulting was. It wasn't until I saw like this consulting club that does nonprofit consulting. And I'm like, sounds like they just work with nonprofits and do just help them think through problems. I was like, that sounds pretty cool. So I joined this club, and then there's like those seniors who are there who are applying for jobs, already have jobs at these like big consulting firms and different industries. And through them, they were kind of able to help mentor me. So just putting myself kind of in a space or in a spot where I can learn from people who aren't just industrial engineers going into manufacturing the whole time I was in college. I think that was really big for me. And so that really helped a lot in terms of kind of figuring out where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do and how I could do it.
Mhm. I'm gonna say one more thing. Another big thing is my freshman year when I joined my club and also sophomore year, a big thing that they did is they sent out the freshmen and sophomores to actually attend different industry events and conferences. So I would say most people have access like starting in college as long as you provide like a .edu, but to apply to like Grace Hopper, and that's like a really big tech conference, and people are so willing to like even interview on the spot. My second year I went to there's another one called SWE National, and it was located in Indianapolis, and I interviewed with United Airlines as a software engineer on the spot. And I was like, I don't know anything. Like I'm just started my like intro comp sci classes, but just like showing enthusiasm, they were like, "We'll just interview you anyways." So I think like backpacking what Kate said, like meeting different professionals from like diverse backgrounds is like attend different conferences and industry events because schools, colleges, even post grad, like there's some in every single city. There's some almost like every single day somewhere, even if it's fully remote, just like joining, I think would really open people's eyes and like maybe allow you to get a foot in the door at place like to places you might not know before. There's like Dreamforce in San Francisco, and a bunch of tech companies come together for that and kind of showcase their products. So just like being kind of knowledgeable on different like summits and conferences is definitely helpful as well.
Yeah, you know what's funny? In all of the podcasts I've hosted, no one's ever brought up conferences and in-person events, which is actually like great advice as well. And so, now that I'm thinking about it, writing it down,
Yeah.
why should people go out there and attend these events? Like I hear of huge like networking events or just conferences to talk about, new products that are being released or in software engineering, whatever conferences you've been to. So what are kind of the key things that people should be going there for? What's the importance of these, I guess, conferences or events that happen all throughout college?
Yeah. So I've attended almost three every single year since I've started. So I guess I've been to like 15 or 20 now.
Mhm.
And I would say the biggest thing is just networking. And networking could also mean like it's just like tables that are set up and there's like a line of people. You eventually have like 2 minutes to kind of give an elevator pitch. They look at your resume. Also, they do provide kind of feedback on the spot, which is really, really helpful. And as a freshman, you might be like, oh, they're giving me negative feedback and not take it very well. But I would say over time, like that allows you to adjust your resume, like kind of figure out like what a specific company wants. And also just kind of learning different products, what is happening in the world, like what different careers exist, right? Because you're walking around, it's not all just going to be the same thing. There's like defense company, there's finance firms, and just like tech is a very broad thing. So all these tech summits and conferences, there's like key panelists. They talk about their experiences from like day one. And I think that's really helpful when students hear because like this person started off in the same position as me and like it shouldn't be scary to talk to these people and then you can eventually gain mentorship. You can end up, I'd say, like finding two mentors somewhere, someone that's where you want to be in 5 years and then someone that's where you want to be in 10 years, and just like keeping in touch with this person. Like I'll just like go LinkedIn DM a person that I worked for like 5 years ago and just stay in touch and have like a cordial relationship with them. And if not even professional, like if I have any question about entrepreneurship, like I just reached out to my old manager that I worked at for his startup a few years ago. So I think even if it's not like super professional, they can really give like key advice. Or you can just ask advice because people are usually like more high up, but everyone kind of started off in a lower level at some point in their life. So I think that's a big thing. Like to kind of get rid of like imposter syndrome too. Because like walking
Hmm.
around, there's a lot of people and you're just like holding your resume like this and kind of walking around scared. But everyone's also in the same boat. So you also get to meet other students, right? Other
Hmm.
people from your school, like major. So just making friends and just like building and fostering relationships.
Yeah. And you also brought up tech is a very big industry, and I kind of want to touch on that where people say, "Oh, I'm going to go into finance or marketing or sales or tech,"
Mhm.
but that could mean a million different jobs. Like I have a friend who became a software engineer for Applebee's, which I didn't know they needed that, but apparently every company does need that. And so, um, what would you say to the student who they want to get into tech, they have, some coding skills or they're learning it, and they want to try to find which specific, I guess, companies or sorts of or parts of the industry to get into? Like, how do you analyze the landscape of tech or marketing or whatnot and actually decide which sort of roles you want to actually pursue within that industry?
Yeah, so I think being in tech generally means working with technology like industry or being involved in technology specific roles. And
Hmm.
I would say it encompasses like a wide range of different roles like software engineering, data science is tech, product managers, UX, UI, even like and it comes down to like tech support people or like people that work in data centers. And I think it truly depends on what someone does as their major. Um, and also I feel like it depends on what classes people enjoy, and that's like kind of the path that they take because college doesn't allow you to take, or I guess college specifically, like you can't take too many specific courses because we don't really have concentrations in computer science. It's like people usually take the same courses that it's like kind of scheduled for you first, second, third, and fourth year. So it really depends on your preferences. And then you focus on like applying to internships specifically. Like say I took a data science intro class and I really liked it. I would go apply for like a data science role at a specific company. And I'd say that's working in tech. Like you can work for like Nike as a software engineer. That's
Hmm.
not working in tech, but you're working on a tech role at
Hmm.
like a e-com company.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.